Hi, and welcome back to the podcast. Today we have Joe Ryan here at the Ellington Airport. Joe, welcome to the show.
Thanks so much for having me. This is great.
We've been trying to do this for a long time now, and we're here at the Redbird Migration, 2024 Redbird Migration, and we had the opportunity to actually make this happen. So I'm really excited. You have a very interesting background. I think a lot of people can learn from it. And we're going to ask you some hard questions today on aviation insurance, which for you probably easy, but a lot of us have these questions all the time. So let's start with your history. Talk to me about your growing up as a pilot, I guess. So what got you into flying, and where'd you go, and how did that happen?
Yeah, so I actually did. I don't have any family in aviation, which I think is kind of odd.
Everybody thinks that because of that you have family.
Right, like my dad was a pilot, or I had an uncle or something, right, that mentored me, or grandpa or something. But for me, it was just kind of a natural born thing. I come from a big family. I'm the second youngest of 10 kids.
And you have 10 brothers?
I have 5 brothers, 4 sisters.
Oh my God.
Yeah, I'm second youngest, so I've got a big family. I've got a lot of nieces and nephews, like 34. I know, it's crazy. But nobody before me was a pilot, so I kind of caught this bug, I think, early on. Always had like little RC airplanes and stuff. And so when the time came, I went to UND in Grand Forks. And that kind of started my aviation career.
How was mom and dad when you said, I want to be a pilot? Like, was there any resistance? Did they not want you to be a pilot, or?
No, there wasn't any resistance. There wasn't any of that. My dad's a CPA. So, for him, it was, he's kind of a numbers guy. And I've got a little bit of that in me.
He saw some tax returns from some of the pilots. Like, yeah, we can do this.
He said, you know what? Got full steam ahead there. So no, there wasn't any pushback or anything like that. Just kind of left to me to figure out how to do that because there was no known path, right?
So no mentorship really from anybody other than what your dad's previous experience, but which was nothing in aviation.
No.
You come to University of North Dakota, and then they have a flight program, and actually, that's one of the things a pretty good one.
Yep.
So those are one of the things that actually attracted me to you because if I remember correctly, one of the first time I met you was at Fasana, and I remember walking by your booth. And seeing this big poster, which maybe one day Aviators will be on a poster like that.
Yep.
With like
absolutely
50 airplanes or so from the University of North Dakota.
Yeah.
So you flew those airplanes in there, or were those newer fleet? Or?
Those are a newer fleet, and I'm going to date myself a little bit, but they're flying Archers now. I think it's the LXs, maybe it's the TXs, I can't remember. But I flew the 172, so still G1000 172s. I didn't know what that meant. When I went to UND,
nobody does, right?
No, I called the lady when I was first going in there and to UND, and she said, "We're putting you in private pilot ground school." And I said, "Oh, that's great. Like, I'm sure everybody gets that." Like, I had no idea what that was. So that was just boom, August. And
sometimes it's good, you just go in and you have really no idea what you signed up for. But yeah, I actually rather talking about the different airplanes. I looked at the history of the fleet of University of North Dakota. And it seems like they've had a mixed fleet. They sometimes go for Cessna, sometimes for Piper.
Yeah.
At some points they had Cirrus.
Yeah.
What do you think of that? Like, what do you see?
Yeah, I think, gosh, for me it was 172s, right? That's what I learned in, and I didn't know anything besides that. I've since flown a lot of Piper products over the years, and I've flown a lot of Cirrus as well. I have 1,000 hours dual given in SR-22s. So I like them all. I think ground visibility is better in a 172, right? You don't have the wing in your way.
If you had to pick one.
Oh gosh, well, between the Piper for training or for personal flying, because now I fly an SR-22, so our company does. So you're really getting me here.
Talking about that. I saw the plane parked at the Hilton in Oshkosh.
Did you?
Yeah, the Wings insurance series.
Yeah, wow. Gosh, it just shows up.
How does somebody get a slot into that little ramp?
I think if you're just really, really nice to people.
They give you a slot?
I don't know. That's what I've heard. I think if just wonderful kindness goes a long way.
That's awesome. I saw it on there, but anyways.
Yeah, no, it's great.
No, let's stick to training, right? So if you were to pick one training airplane.
Yeah.
Which I don't really see a Cirrus as an airplane for training, even though it is being used for training. Which one would you pick? Like if you had one trainer and you had to teach in that trainer only.
I would say the 172 probably, and the reason I would is just because it's probably the one I grew up on, right? It's the first things learned. It's the law of primacy,
Right.
It's like you started there, and so it's got a real special place in my heart. But as do the Pipers, but
Yeah.
I would say
Have you ever flown a Diamond?
I actually I don't think I have. I don't think I've ever flown a Diamond.
Yeah.
No.
They're cool airplanes. You know, we have both. We have Cessnas
Yeah.
and Diamonds. I think Cessna is just Cessna, right?
Yeah.
It's like, you know,
Tried and true.
do you think of coffee? What do you think of?
Yeah, I mean,
Starbucks or Dunkin', right?
I was gonna say Folgers,
no,
but maybe I should go check
wait,
my birth
aren't you-
certificate.
Yeah, the little red at the FBO.
Right.
No, you guys have a different one up there, no? And you're from Minnesota,
Caribou.
right? Caribou, yeah, that's your.
You a big Caribou fan? Are you?
No, actually, you know, it's funny you say that. I haven't been to Minneapolis. I hadn't been to Minneapolis in like over 2 years. And I flew there yesterday, or the day before. Yeah, the day before yesterday.
Okay. All right.
And there's this famous. I don't know if it's famous. I think it's famous. This
Yeah.
donut shop in the airport, and they make this breakfast donut. That it's a donut with like bacon, egg, and cheese.
Sounds amazing.
It's like the sweet and salty and.
Did it blow your mind?
Oh yeah, I used to have that when I was a regional guy. I used to
Yeah.
fly there all the time,
Yeah.
and I love that freaking place. I was there for.
Who did you fly for as a regional?
Republic.
Republic. Okay.
Yeah, I had a great time there.
Yeah. Republic's a good airline.
Yeah, it was a good place. Actually, we're driving around all the airports today, and I saw they have a lift academy in Galveston.
Galveston or
Galveston.
Yep.
Yes.
Yep.
We drove all the way down there just to like
Yeah.
kill time, and I
Yeah.
saw some. Actually, they have diamonds. They have the diamond.
Well, they're the Republic pathway, right?
Yeah,
Okay,
exactly.
okay.
I think they own the flight school as well.
Okay. Yeah.
Anyways, we got sidetracked there. So
We did.
back to the 172, or
Yeah.
sorry, back to UND. You got your private pilot. You sit in private pilot class. How does that feel like? You don't even fly. Like how does it go? Like do you start your private ground school first and then fly at the same time, or do you like wait and then do your flight training? How does it
Yeah.
work at UND?
So at UND, yeah, you start in your ground school, and then you fly at the same time if you can get a flight block, basically. So you don't have to do them at the same time, and sometimes just based on availability, they can't get you in for
They're that
enough
busy.
instructors. They're very, very busy. Right now, from what I hear, they're only accepting half of their applicants
Wow.
into the aviation side. So it's there's a lot of demand.
Was UND an aviation school that became a university, or was it a university that became an aviation school?
That is such a good question, and I don't know the answer to that question. I don't know. I know that the aviation program is very large and really a big part of that university now, but I don't know off the top of my head.
They're
I
flying.
should know this.
Yeah, you should.
I should, but I don't know that. I think almost certainly it was a university first because it was started in late 1800s.
Oh wow.
So I'm almost, that would be my inclination, is like it was a university first and then the aviation program almost certainly. Obviously the Wright brothers were until 1903. We can do the history lesson from there. I'm pretty sure it was that way, but I don't want to talk out of turn.
One of the reasons, I mentioned I was looking at their fleet. I was reading an article. I think it was AOPA. Oh no, actually it was the Bonanza Society. They UND was doing research on the new aviation fuels. I don't know if you read anything about that.
Well, I've heard about it, but
they were doing a testing. They were doing a test at UND and running that. I think it was UND. They were running the gas.
Yeah.
And through their airplanes and testing to see if they were getting the same amount of the same TBOs, the same type of maintenance that you would get for the leaded gas.
Yeah.
And I think if I remember correctly, they said that they were flying like 28,000 hours a month or something like that.
Yeah, wow.
And of course, here I am reading this article and I'm like, 28,000 divided by how many?
Right.
Wow. Like they're flying their butts off.
They are.
So
even with the cold weather, which is a huge issue for them.
Right. They only get like what, 6-7 months out of the year versus.
Yeah. I mean, November, December, January, those are tough months. Even February, it's a tough month up there.
I can
March
see that
kind of starts to,
like a scary thing to send a student with those conditions. Like that could be a.
You train them for it, right?
Yeah.
You've got good SOPs, good SMS program, and you train them for it, and you watch them, and it works out really well.
Talking about SMS, I think those were one of the questions that was asked is regarding if the the person seeking insurance has different type of training or safety measures or programs implemented, is that something that like an insurance or an underwriter would say, okay, we'll consider that as a discount for your for your policy, or is that something that is kind of like it's just combined into everything and assessed as a company?
Yeah, I think to some extent, so to answer the first question, it's not a set discount. There's no actual set discounts for having
It's
an
not like an
SMS
AARP
program.
membership.
No, exactly, right? Some might be familiar with like an AOPA discount, right? So
Right.
there are a couple of underwriters that'll give you just a click discount, $59 or 5% on the haul, right? So something for an AOPA discount. But it's not that. It describes or kind of speaks to the flight school or operation, whatever it is, because SMS is not just for flight schools, but as a whole. And so I think that is more what it does. So in talking with underwriters, and obviously I come from the SMS background, right? So I come from that. And then when I was chief as well later on, building some of those SOPs and some of those safety protocols is really important and part of my duties. But underwriters take a very holistic look, and every underwriter does it a little bit differently. And that's part of why that matters. So it does matter, it's just how much.
I think this is interesting because I want to touch on the underwriter, because to me, like the underwriter is like if you ever go to a dealership, right, and you're talking to to your sales rep, and then you have the financial advisor in the back.
Yeah.
That the guy comes back and says, no, it's going to be 15,000.
Right.
Right. You know, and you're negotiating back and forth. So
Right.
I want to touch on that later after we get over your
Yeah.
aviation, but. There's definitely some questions that I have about underwriters and what an underwriter is and
Yeah.
how your interaction with that underwriter is.
Absolutely.
So you come out of UND, right? You got your private instrument commercial, CFI, you did the entire program
Double
with
I,
them?
yep.
So double I, up to
Yep,
double I,
yep.
multi-engine, everything.
Yep.
And then they put you in to be an instructor with them, or how does
Yes,
it work?
they offer you a position if you're able, and so many of the students, they do offer that, and so I did that for, gosh, I only did that for 4 months,
Wow.
something like that.
Well, how many hours were you flying as an instructor at UND?
That's a great question. You're really making me dig. It's good. It's good. I would say I never got up to a full student load. So I think there's some caveats here, but I think I probably did something like 70 hours a month or something. But I never.
That's pretty good.
It's pretty good,
yeah.
but I mean, there were instructors doing well over 100. So it's just based on load, right? And I wasn't there long enough for them to build a full schedule.
Yeah, it's not like a one-day thing that you just jump in and go.
Right, it's not like here's all your students and they're perfectly matched up to your schedule and here you go, right? I mean, we know
Because
better
you're
than
still
that,
at the same time you're being an instructor, you're still taking classes there too, no?
Yeah, exactly. I was an instructor as a CFI while I was taking my CFII class.
Gotcha.
Yeah, so at the same time.
A lot of workload.
Yeah, it was busy, but that's, when you're chasing after a dream, you don't care.
It doesn't matter.
No, you just go. Right.
So you were there for 4 months, and then you went to another place. What happened there that you decided to jump ship?
Yeah, I in my back of my mind, I knew there was a place that was warmer. I knew somewhere was warmer. And actually, I'm from the Minneapolis, St. Paul, Twin Cities area, and they're even warmer. But I saw a posting at UND. So UND used to have this amazing jobs board where alumni and people that knew the program, they would post their jobs there, and they would be looking for UND students, right? Graduates, right? Exactly. And so I saw a posting for a previous UND grad who was starting a Cirrus flight school in Las Vegas. And I got to tell you, I was well underqualified. He really took a risk on me. And he's one of my good friends to this day. I mean, a really good guy out there. And he had just a couple airplanes and we just went nuts. He was just starting and he said, I needed somebody to kind of head the instructor pool and build this curriculum and build this with me. And I'm going to take a chance on you. And I said, yes, please. Stepped up to the plate. Wow. So it was great.
Yeah, sometimes that's what you need to really learn something, right? You're never going to be
Drop it
perfectly
in,
prepared,
right?
just-
Fight right into the fire and let's see what happens.
Exactly.
Yeah.
I told you I wasn't kidding. Texas was nice weather today, no?
You know, I just flew in. You know that so I can only speak to. I mean, it's okay.
Well, you had a good presentation coming into the FBO.
With the doors locked and me pounding on them, it was good. No, that's just good old fashioned Texas hospitality.
No, they're really nice here, actually.
They are tremendously nice
Yeah,
here.
there's-
We kid, of course.
Yeah.
Yes.
No, I love the Texas hospitality. I say if I wasn't living in Florida, I'd probably live in Texas.
Yeah.
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 I just can't deal with the cold up there.
I get it.
So you moved to Arizona. Now you went from extreme cold to extreme heat because it gets hot there.
Ooh, yeah.
Like no matter what AC you have in the airplane, there's no way you can cool that airplane
Well
down.
said.
So how does that work? How was that experience? And also, what was the density altitude like where you're at?
You know, Vegas. Gosh, I can't remember. Was it 4,000? Was the actual altitude? Density altitude obviously would depend on the day and then the heat, but it could be quite high. I mean, it was. You're sitting in the bowl, right, in Vegas, so the mountains. So there's the Spring Mountains, there's Mount Charleston, right, to your west that you got to cross to go into LA. And then to the east, there's incredible sort of sloping mountains in Lake Mead and the Colorado River. And so that pushes off a lot of turbulence. Actually, a lot of mountain wave is what happens. And so I don't know exactly what the density altitude was. Obviously it would fluctuate a little bit, but it was a challenging environment to teach in for sure.
I guess the Cirrus helped, right? Because you have a little bit more power than I can't imagine like a 152 out there.
And they were doing it. I mean, there were flight schools out there flying, the 152s, the 172s. And
yeah, there's a school that was at Fasana that was doing that, and I'm just thinking to myself, and I'm like, man, like how do these? I mean, our guys complain that they get hot in our 172s.
Well, you got to go at 4:30 a.m. Right? The crack of dawn. You get out there. It's cool. And you fly for a couple hours.
I never forget my first time as an airline pilot landing in Vegas.
Yeah.
And it's like 2 a.m. in the morning. Got one of these bugs that's been flying around.
Oh, that was well done. Thank you for saying something about that. I've been trying to get it, but
I got it.
That's huge.
So I literally got into Vegas. It's like 3 a.m. in the morning, and I'm walking out, and I'm just like, oh, this is gonna be great, right? Vegas.
Yeah.
Door comes open as the last floor, where they pick us up for the cruise.
Yes.
And I walk outside. I'm like, what in the world is going on here? Like it felt like I was in a volcano. I couldn't breathe out. It was like just hot, and I'm just like, oh my god.
It's you expect, even being from Florida, you expect the breeze to be a relief.
No.
And in Vegas, it's a hairdryer. It's you turn the hairdryer up on the hottest setting and blow it at your face. That's what the wind feels like.
I always love when people say, "Oh no, but it's a dry heat. It's better." I'm like, I love my wet heat. Give me wet heat, not dry
humidity,
heat.
Right? Give you humidity. Yeah, you don't have to go through a tub of lotion every day.
No,
it's nice. Yeah.
I'm definitely okay with my humidity.
Yeah.
Does the Cirrus have a heat limitation on it? Like, does the airframe have like a temperature?
Not that I know of. It actually may, and I be honest with you, I would have to dig into the POH a little bit, which I could very easily because I have it on my laptop. But
like I know some of the diamonds, like the 20s for sure, they
there's
have like
CHT limitations, right? I mean, those are going to be.
No, this is like an airframe like temperature.
Interesting.
Yeah, I think there's like an airframe temperature on it. We don't get close to it, but. Some places can get close to that airframe limitation. So
well, I mean, we were doing Scottsdale quite a bit too, and like July in Phoenix is, you can start melting the leather on your seats if you don't put your glare shield. I mean, serious, like you'll burn yourself if you get in there and you don't put the glare shields up. So I don't know the answer to that question. There probably is. And I would just have to search the POH and find it. But yeah.
Just curious, because I know like we
if
have
the diamonds have them, I'm
sure probably that
they're both composite material, so I would assume.
Yeah, I think that's what the limitation is because of the composite.
Yeah.
So this school turns out to be something big, no? Because
yes.
Tell me a little bit about that. Like, how does that evolve, and how was that experience growing with a growing school at the same time?
It was some of the best experiences of my life. So I look back on that still, even. Where I am now, and I take that experience really seriously. But it was amazing. We started small. I really got to know the owner very well. It was just kind of me and him, and then one other, and it was sort of a getting to see something grow was just really unique. It was the little wins, right, that start to rack up, right, and you see the customer that says something really great about you, and then they refer one of their other customers, right, and then that customer ends up buying an aircraft and leasing it back, and now you've got another aircraft on the line. And
How many airplanes did you guys start with?
gosh, I knew you were going to ask me that. I want to say 2.
And when you left, how many were there?
Ooh, I think there was 5, maybe.
Gotcha.
And now there's nothing I did, but there's many more than that. Teens, I think.
Wow.
Yeah, so there's
It's a lot
quite
of money
few.
with these Cirruses. They're not cheap airplanes to buy.
No, they're not.
And there's a lot of competition. I think that would be another question I think in the future. But
Yeah.
seeing I guess a general aviation pilot, right? Not somebody that's an airline pilot or a professional pilot. They're weekend flyers. You're kind of seeing a shift in the market of what airplanes they're buying. And to me, it seems like it's more like a Cirrus product than really like a Lance or a Bonanza or what's the other one? I guess the Diamond DA50.
Yeah.
Right.
Totally.
Just because I think the simplicity of the airplane, one stick, no gear.
Yeah.
Right. So we'll talk a little bit about that on the insurance side of
Yeah.
it and how much that actually affects the price of of the premium.
Yeah, of course.
We can actually go into that a little bit. So what do you think on that? What do you see generally like an airplane, if I'm like retired or I have a business and I want to fly myself around because I need to, right? The general aviation pilot that's not a professional pilot.
Yeah.
Is it that much of a difference for an airplane that has a retractable gear, age? How does that work?
Yeah, age is a factor, certainly. I think, much of the training fleet for many of the flight schools, and what is there, 1,700 or 1,800 flight schools or something like that in the U.S., but many of them are flying relatively old aircraft. I mean, you could have 172s, 152s from the 60s. I've even seen some 50s.
Yeah.
I think, gosh, even 10 years ago, maybe you used to see kind of airplanes from the 70s and say, oh, well, that's not a big deal, right? It's from the 70s, so it's pretty new, right? That was kind of the feel. And now people are looking at aircraft from the 70s and saying, that's pretty old, right? I mean, it's older than 40 years, which is a number a lot of underwriters look at.
We have most of our fleet are Ps.
Yeah.
And those are the 80s, right? Late
Yeah.
80s, early 80s. And for me, that was always young because I learned to fly in M's and N's. And
Absolutely.
the P, when we fly a P, it was like, oh.
Oh, yeah.
I remember we were having this conversation not too long ago because I remember when like the G1000 came out,
Yeah.
right? That was 2004.
Okay.
And we were all like,
right.
oh my God. I remember,
Yeah.
well, you didn't see this because you got to fly on a G1000 from day one.
I know.
But when you fly
I didn't know, though.
I learned to fly in a 150M model, right? With nothing, right? Like, or my radio once, I was literally take off and the radio hit all the way in the back because it fell off the rack. We lost the radio for real.
Hey, but good, clean fun, right?
Yeah,
there.
it was a blast.
Yeah.
So seeing a 2024 airplane with G1000, I was like,
Yeah.
So we bought today a 1999 172.
Yeah.
And that was like brand new airplanes, right? Like I started flying in 2008. A 99 was, less than 10 years old.
Yeah.
And now I'm thinking, I'm like, man, 99, that airplane is 25 years old.
25 years old. I know. But you know what?
But they feel so young.
We can look fondly on the 90s, right? I mean, from an underwriting perspective, anything within the 40-year range is seen as widely quoted. As far as your 172s go, your 152s, they're going to be quoted. They're going to continue to be quoted. There's so much historic data there.
Right.
That it's hard to go away from that, and underwriters know that. Same with the Cherokees. I mean, right after when I got back from Vegas, I ended up flying a 1977 Archer, Piper Archer PA-28 180, and that aircraft had old, cloth seats and radios that you had to like tighten the Allen wrench screw so you could actually twist the radio knobs. Otherwise, you couldn't change the frequency. I mean, that's fine though, right? Like that's fine.
When your hands are sweaty and you can't turn the knob
Yeah,
because it's slipping and it's
oh,
so hard
absolutely, absolutely. So you get the tape out, right, and you cover it in tape so you can. But no, that was, I have a lot of hours logged in that aircraft in 1970. It's like 500 hours.
I mean,
So
we fly Cubs from the 40s, right?
yeah,
So
totally.
it's like it's
It's not a bad thing at all. I just think
it's funny looking at the time, like going back
Right.
and saying like, oh my God, like it's for me,
Right.
a 1980s airplane was young.
right.
Now a 2000 airplanes is just still to me is, we have airplanes at the school that are 2008,
Right.
2009.
Right.
I feel like those things are brand new
Yes.
compared to what the majority of the fleet in the industry is, and but they're actually not that new anymore. They're getting old too.
We're gonna start going off into some sort of nostalgia here, aren't we? We're gonna start talking about back in my day when I know we're gonna lose it.
But it's true.
It is true.
It feels that
It
way.
is.
Like I still feel young and
Absolutely, you are young. I mean, we both are young. I'll say that.
sure.
All right. No,
So-
but So I think
back
age
to
is a factor. Yeah.
Back to the insurance thing.
Yeah.
So we said age is a factor,
Yeah.
complexity of the plane, like as far
Yeah.
as like a retractable landing gear, fixed pitch, like
Yep.
I'm sorry, not fixed pitch, but yeah, fixed pitch props too, right?
Sure.
Is there a huge gap between an airplane that's retractable or an airplane that is fixed? And is it really like if a pilot has more than a certain amount of hours, then he shouldn't really be worried about that? Or how does that?
Yeah, that's a great question. So, fixed gear, single engine aircraft are seen as great transition aircraft. So from the underwriting perspective, so they're going to be the most widely quoted aircraft. You're solid, the ones you've got a ton of historic data on. Those are going to be the ones that are widely quoted. As you move into retract, remembering that the biggest things that affect rates, and I think this is something that you wanted to bring up anyway, and maybe I'll just touch on this briefly, is it's your pilot experience. So first and foremost, your hours, right? It's what do you have time in, right? So, and then it's aircraft value, aircraft age, right? And the operation you're conducting. Basically, those are the things that affect rates. There are some other little things on the sides which we can get into the weeds if we want to. It's fun, but those are the main things that affect rates. So yes, as you move towards a retractable gear aircraft, the rates typically tend to be higher because you have a higher risk of doing something like a gear up,
Right.
where you don't in the fixed gear, right? So, and then that leads to a prop strike and down the line, right, which can be a much higher claim than even a hard landing would be in a fixed
Right.
gear. So yes, there's higher rates for retractable gear aircraft. The caveat to that, and it's not so much as a caveat as it is in addition to basically, once you kind of hit that 500-hour total time mark, and I know you want, and I think people should know that. Yeah.
At what point do I can look on controller or trade a plane or
Yeah.
wherever you used to buy airplanes, right? Flying maybe.
Sure.
And you can
Shameless
say,
plug.
and you can just literally, okay, I don't have to worry about like I'm making a decision on an airplane based on insurance
Yeah.
that am I going
That's-
to pay more because of it or
That,
whatever.
and that's what you just said there was really, I think, should be noted, which is, I would say half the time I'm talking to people that are making the decision based on the insurance premium, which is not necessarily a bad thing. But I think it's important to understand how insurance rates work and not just look at maybe a first year or second year premium and look at maybe a dollar cost average of a 5-year, right? Or, for example, right, I mean, 0-hour student pilots, you want to get into Bonanza? No problem. No problem. You can do it. You want to buy 0 student pilot, you want to buy a brand new SR22, SR22T? No problem, right? You want to buy a DA50? No problem. You're going to need training. You're going to need good training.
Right.
You're going to need somebody who knows that airframe, right? Underwriting is going to want that. But you can certainly do it. Is the premium going to be higher than it would be for a 500-hour total time private instrument rated pilot? Certainly it is.
Of course.
But the question is, in a lot of people's minds, is if this is the aircraft I want to fly for the next X number of years, do I move into it now or do I buy the 172 and then the 182 and then the Saratoga and then the DA50, right? Or whatever. And so, what we can do is show you, here's what it looks like, right? Here's what it looks like over 5 years. You make the choice, right? But having the insurance premium dictate, it's a big part of the cost. You know that. I mean, it's a big part of the cost, but it's not the end all be all.
Right. Yeah, I think it's you make a good point. And then a lot of people think that they should start on the airplane on a basic trainer and then move on. And, you know, ask the Air Force, right? They don't put Air Force pilots into a 172
well
on
said.
day one, right?
Yeah.
You know, why? Because they have good training, they have systems, and they put them into the correct airplane and know how to do it.
Right.
But we see that even with our, you know, with our fleet, right? We have Diamonds and Cessnas. The Diamonds have a constant speed propeller, the Cessnas don't.
Right.
Well, the student pilot that comes in on the door has no idea that airplanes come with a fixed pitch or a constant speed until
True.
he gets his license, and if flight right wants to rent a Cessna to try it out, it's like, oh, I don't have to deal with this prop anymore.
Right.
But when you look at their track, it doesn't change because, oh, the guy that doesn't have a constant speed propeller solos faster. It's just just another lever that, because law of primacy, you get used to it from day one.
Yeah.
You just learn it, and then you see the guy in the Cessna go into an airplane with 3 sticks in there, and he's like, another one I have to deal with, and then they get confused on that. So it's kind of funny to see like the transition back and forth. How you know, just because it's more complex doesn't necessarily mean it's a bad thing. Yes, it might require more training if you know, depending on your the way that you learn and the position that you're in. As long as you have, like you said, good training, you can. Yeah. I think you can learn to fly in anything.
I agree, and we see that in the insurance industry, especially now as we, you know, that's happening more and more as we move towards, you know, what's inevitably going to be a soft market here in the next couple of years. So you're going to see more and more of that. Although in an exceedingly hard market, we still saw it.
Right.
So, you know, I don't think that's going to change. The premiums might change a little bit for the better, for the client.
Well, we already saw that, like we talked earlier with our policy.
Yeah.
Let's talk a little bit about underwriter, right? Like, some people have an idea of what underwriter is, but a lot of people don't, right?
Yeah.
You know, they picture underwriter, somebody in some fancy building that says yes or no, or like, this is how much you're going to pay.
It's the finance guy, right, in the back that says, no, we can't do that. No.
Turning dials.
Yeah.
No.
I need an extra $3,000 on my trade-in. We can't do that. Yeah.
So talk to me about underwriter. Like, so let's build the system, right? You have your office, right, with Wings.
Yeah.
And you guys are insurance brokers, and then you have staff that aids you throughout the process.
Correct.
And all that stuff. And then your job is as a brokerage is basically shop for us, the consumer, what our best options are and why we should pick these options, right?
Yeah.
So as Wings, you guys have a direct line with AIG, Bacon, you know, some of these underwriters, right?
Yeah.
And then how does it work on that side, right? We don't really know that side. We always deal with you guys. How does it work on their end? Like, is there a representative for Wings, like an account manager for your company that picks up the phone and talks to you guys and says, okay, this is what we want? Is there an actual person making this decision, or is it like tables that they look at and go from there?
We hold court every once a month. Your risk gets reviewed. That's why I haven't gotten back to you. No, I'm happy to do that and share a little bit about. That's part of our mission and at Wings. A lot of us come from the aviation side, for the pilot side, and on the pilot side, right, we have a lot of transparency, right? We know what we're doing. We know what we're getting into. We have SOPs, right? It's not a huge mystery where we're going, right? We know, we have good charts. Right, we're with someone else who's maybe been there already, right, in a dual crew environment. So it's very transparent, and I come from that side of things. And so part of what we've done at Wings is really try to make this industry more transparent. So it's great that you asked that question.
And you guys do a good job. Like, don't get me wrong, coming from a different brokerage before, this is not a plug for Wings, but just
no, that's fine.
Like, it was literally like a phone call saying, this is what it is going to be, and this is what you should do, but this is your only option. Yeah. And you're due for renewal. Have fun. Here's the bill.
Yeah. Unfortunately, I wouldn't say that's uncommon.
Right.
But it doesn't need to be that way. There is really everyone in the industry pretty much knows that brokers get paid on commission. I don't think we're
It's not a secret.
No, I don't think we're hiding something there. I mean, obviously we're in business to make money, but ultimately, why can't you at the same time, provide transparency and do right by your clients? I think those things can be mutually the same. I have to believe they can, otherwise I wouldn't be doing what I'm doing. So basically, the way it works is brokers represent the clients. They represent you guys, right? So we don't represent underwriting. It's really beneficial to have good underwriting relationships to be able to place risks, right, with underwriters and get good terms and get good policies, good premiums, et cetera. But we ultimately represent the client.
When you talk about underwriter, about, let's say, for example, a policy, and I'm sure this is going to vary between an airplane that's a general aviation pilot or somebody that is, an operator that does air tours or flight schools or whatever it is, right? Everybody's kind of different.
Yeah.
I'm assuming with a pleasure, business pleasure policy, there's a lot less complexity. They kind of have like tables and you kind of fall into these buckets and then they kind of give you back a price back. Right? That's pretty much how it happens.
To some extent, I would say that's probably an oversimplification of that, because there is quite a bit of negotiation done. But to some extent,
so there's negotiation back and forth with.
Absolutely. On every risk, there is negotiation. On every risk.
So.
Or at least there's an opportunity
to negotiate.
Yeah.
So how about now with an operator like a flight school, what are some of the things that you would say or, that are brought up in this conversation with underwriters saying like, okay, listen, this is, you should look into this, or you shouldn't, this is these are the factors.
Yeah.
How does that work? Like, how does?
Yeah. So there's 19 underwriters. So you have to be contracted as a brokerage. You have to be contracted with each underwriter. And that's really important. So we have every single underwrter, besides a Vemco. So Vemco is the only one they don't use brokers, right? They're what would you call, like a direct writing company. But every other market in the United States we work with, and then we work with a lot of markets abroad as well, globally. But here in the United States, there's 19. So what I would do for, let's say, a flight school risk, right, is you would gather information, right, from the insured, right? So somebody who wants insurance, you gather information, and we've really developed a lot of technology behind that and around that. There's a lot of paper forms and stuff that are still being used out there. We've tried to go away from that and do things digitally, just easier. I mean, we're pilots, so we understand that nobody likes to add up their logbook, et cetera. But I know, I get it.
You should see the looks I get from our pilots when we give them every. All right, here's your homework.
Oh, geez.
Do I have to put how much time I have in what to do? Yes.
Yes, you do. Yep. So I totally get that. But that's how we start things. We gather some detail, as simple as we can, and then we build a profile. So build a profile for you, and then we send that profile. So typically, actually, the way, if I may dig into the weeds, just a little bit to give a little more transparency.
Is very interesting. I think a lot of people don't get to see this side of it.
Well, and I won't dig in too much, but what happens is, at least on our end, I can only speak for what we do, but we send, all communication for us is direct. So if I have a client, right, and they talk to me, right, I see them at a show or whatever else, and they say, hey, I want to work with you, and I get their information. So it's from me to them, and then they send their information back to me. I am then going to direct. So I'm going to say, hey, and stay involved throughout the process. I don't know how common or rare that is, because I know it's the way we do things. It's the way we handle things. We have a very large support staff, which far exceeds our producer side of things, but we stay very much direct line. So everything is approved and directed by us, right. the actual brokers, who know the client, who have talked to the client, who understand what they're trying to do. And then so we take that information, we say, hey, here's exactly what I want to do. So we'll say that, and we'll say, okay, I want you to build a profile like this, and then I want you to send this to these specific underwriters at these specific underwriting firms who will now become our targets. And then I want you to send it to these others at everywhere else, right? So you'll pick your underwriter, You pick your
You have a
underwriter.
feeling, right? You have an idea of what's
Well, you
going to
do
be.
this long enough, you know who's going to bid, right? You know, but that doesn't. That shouldn't stop anybody from. And it doesn't stop us from going everywhere because the industry changes so much. So you never know who's going to jump in and bid where they wouldn't before. So you can't leave anybody out.
Right. Talking about bidding, is there a possibility that somebody is uninsured, like uninsurable would be the word? Like, is there a way, like, I know we have protections, I think, for example, in Florida with like real estate, that there's going to be at some point you're going to go to like a government sponsored program.
Yeah, yep.
Is there such protection for aviation insurance, or is it basically like there could be a possibility that somebody is completely uninsured?
Gosh, I wouldn't say there is. There's maybe a possibility that happened. I've never seen it.
It's just going to be more expensive on the premium.
Yeah, it's just going to be more expensive. If you've got a lot of risk, you're going to have less options, right? The more inherent risk you have, the less options you're going to have typically, right? And the lower your risk, the more options and lower the premium. I mean, it's really as simple as that. Now, what you might consider risk and what underwriters might consider risk might be two different things. Remember, it's not what I consider risk. I can educate you on what the underwriters are probably going to say, but I'm no substitute for the underwriter actually saying it. And I think that's a good distinction.
These negotiations back and forth, how long do they typically take? Like,
it depends. So it depends on the size of the policy. It depends on the complexity of the policy. They can take anywhere from just a couple of days to a couple of weeks.
Interesting. One of the questions we got asked was, an owner that got a policy has said that they needed 25 hours of training from an instructor to fly the airplane solo. Is that something that can be negotiated with the underwriter at some point? Like, how is that? How are those decisions made, and how flexible are those are those hours? And then the question is also, if you don't meet those requirements and you fly the airplane for those 24 hours, clearly you're not insurable. But then after that time, do you become insurable? How does that play out?
So, and just to kind of clarify, are you saying while you would be doing that 25 hours of dual, you would not be insured? Is that what you're saying? Is that the question?
Right.
Or are you insured while you're doing that 25 hours? Or
well, let's say so the first question is, how negotiable is that? Like, can you actually go back and say, oh, look, I bought a Cirrus, they want me to have 50 hours in it, but come on, I got 3,000 hours in a twin engine, whatever, Baron, right?
Sure. Yeah.
Come on, really, you're gonna make me go 25 hours with an instructor on a Cirrus? How flexible are those? And is that something that comes up that you use in your negotiations? Like, okay, look, this guy has flown 300 hours in a Baron. Like, we really think he needs 25 hours of training. How flexible is that?
Yeah, it can be flexible, and I'm going to say that. And the reason I'm going to say that is because it really depends on who the underwriter is first and foremost. How many options there are, right? The more options you have, the more ability you have to probably negotiate that. If it's one option, you're still absolutely trying to negotiate it, but it's a less powerful it's more of an ask at that point than a negotiation, right? Would you please, right? But again, even when you have one option, you can still negotiate, and the reason you can is because some things just make sense. So that's really what separates. There's this saying we have in this. I don't know if everybody says this, but we do at Wings, which is you can very easily teach an aviation person insurance, but it's much more difficult to teach someone who's good at insurance aviation. Much more difficult. And so what we find is it's the same thing, right? Like, we're going to these underwriters and not all of them are pilots. And we're saying, look, like, you quoted this. You're not a pilot. Like, you quoted this, but this doesn't actually make any sense from a pilot perspective. Like, I've flown these aircraft, right? I've done a transition. I've done initial, right? In a heavy jet, multi-engine jet, right? Like, I've done recurrent and differences training, right? What you're requiring here doesn't actually make a ton of sense from a pilot perspective. Wouldn't you rather do X and Y and Z, and here's why? And sometimes that actually works, right? Which it should, because it makes a lot of sense.
Right.
Or for example, you might say,
that's a great point. I've never really thought that the underwriter might not be a pilot.
and many times they are not. I would say more often they're not than they are. And if they are a pilot, typically they're not an accomplished pilot, which is not knocking them at all. They're very good underwriters, but they're not.
They haven't seen the full spectrum of the industry
They
like
haven't.
somebody that has.
They haven't, and so you'll run into instances, right, where you'll say, hey, this guy's transitioning into a M350, perhaps, right, and he's a lower time pilot, and you want 50 hours dual. Well, that doesn't actually make a ton of sense. Why not have him do 15 hours dual and then have him fly like 30 hours by himself before he carries passengers? Right? Why not have him go get some time by himself? He's already got 500 total time. It's not like he's a 0-hour pilot. And have him build that experience, right? Because he needs that experience before he starts carrying passengers, rather than just being like, here's your 50 dual, and suddenly your dual ends, right? And now you're with passengers and you're on your own.
Right.
So you might as well have that transition phase, and it's better for the client, and typically because they want to go places, and it actually makes sense from a safety perspective.
You mentioned passengers, and that sparked a question that I had. I saw 2 days ago a Cessna 172 in a 3-seat configuration, and it was an Emerito airplane.
Oh boy.
Oh no,
Oh no. No. There's no.
it was an Emerito airplane, and it literally had it looked like a jet, right? It's captain, co-pilot, and then the little jump seat in the back.
Oh wait, it was 111.
Yes.
Wow.
I had never.
Crazy.
I had never.
You're gonna have to show me a picture of that later. Not now, but later.
In the years that I've been in this industry, I've never seen a Cessna with 2 seats in the front and then 1 seat in the center.
Oh, it's in the center. So it was 2 in the front, center in the back.
Center in the
No,
back.
I've never.
It's
seen
literally
it.
like
Is it meant for spin?
The only reason that I can think of somebody doing that is maybe insurance. It might be cheaper because you remove a seat from the plane.
You know, that gets asked a lot.
And that was another question
Gets
that I was
asked a
going to
lot.
ask. Like,
A lot of times, not always, but a lot of times underwriters will say, we're going to quote that with the manufacturer-approved seating, right? So take out as many seats as you want, but because they're able to be put back in, we're going to quote it from the full
even
amount.
if, like, for example, let's say you had an exclusion. Like, our Seneca has a 6-place airplane,
Yeah.
right? We never
Well,
fill that plane with
yeah,
6 seats.
yeah.
It's 2 people
Yeah.
always flying in that airplane.
I know.
So if we removed, they probably have that in their formula, right? It's like it's never flying with 6
Right.
people. It's usually
Right.
flying with 2 people. So
Right.
that's probably why they don't give you any.
Well, and again, it can be done. So, I'm kind of using some general rules of thumb, just because otherwise we're going to get way too far in the weeds.
Like, we had this with my Bonanza.
Yes, certainly we did.
It's a 5-seat airplane
Yes.
from the factory, but we
Right.
only have 4 seats in the plane.
Right, totally, exactly. So it certainly can be done if you remove some seats. I mean, the classic example is the Saratoga, right? I mean, no one can fit in that 7th seat. I mean, nobody really flies that thing with 6 people in there. So, but there's that 7th seat, 1 + 6. Like, I don't even know what that thing is. It says child seat, but I don't think a child could even sit in that. But anyway, so a lot of times it'll be a 1 + 5, right, where you'll do that on the insurance side. All you're doing there is adjusting the liability payout, right? So your typical liability coverage that you have, right, is the lowest limit's $1 million, each occurrence sublimit $100,000 each passenger. That would be like the standard limit in aviation. You go up from there. So all you're doing is reducing that part a little bit, and usually that's only, 15% or less, sometimes just 5% of the premium.
So it's not going to make a.
Doesn't usually make an
Huge
appreciable difference on that side, but it's fun to talk about.
Yeah.
Yeah. And
Well, it's one of those things that comes up. That people ask a lot, I'm sure.
yeah,
Is
yeah.
the
Can I
seat-
save some money, right? And it's a good question, right? I don't have as much liability here on the passenger side as maybe the factory warranted it with, right? And so is that going to save me some money? And the answer is it might.
One of the other questions is insurance mandatory? And actually, this was a topic that came up with Fasana as well. And there was a lot of strong opinions on either side of this conversation. And if I understand correctly, unlike your car, we don't have the requirement to have insurance on the airplanes, right? We don't need to have insurance.
Yeah.
But I think there's a smart path to take here, and one of them, I think there's no, for me, there's no negotiation, is the liability side of it, right? And then we have the whole protection. do you see any difference? Like, do you see a lot of policies that have that split, that people are just getting liability? I mean, we've had that happen with some airplanes because it just makes more sense just to
Yeah.
get liability.
Yeah.
I think that happened with one of the airplanes that we worked
Yeah.
on.
Yeah.
But do you see a lot of people just getting liability and self-insuring for the aircraft? Or is it mostly like everybody gets both? It's an all-in-one.
Yeah, and just to caveat, I think I've used that word a little too much now. I'm now done. I'm gonna have to find a new word here, but I'll add something to that, which is to the do you have to have insurance? So yes, most states, not all, most states do not require aviation insurance. There are a couple. Minnesota is actually one of them that does require liability. So you have to have liability insurance if you register your aircraft in Minnesota. There's a couple other states out there, I believe, but they change quite a bit. So
Do you require to have it if you're flying through the state?
no,
Okay.
not from what I understand. I would have to look up that ruling. I'm not the expert there.
50 states, 50 different decisions. Could be
No, I think you're probably grandfathered. It's just if you register the aircraft there, from what I understand. But
Interesting. I had no idea that states.
there are some states, and the EAA at some point put out an article. It's on the EAA's website somewhere, and they have a list of states that do require some sort, or you have to dig in a little further to see if you might meet the requirements to carry insurance. So I think there was, at last count, and this was a number of years ago, there was 11 or something that had some sort of regulations regarding aviation insurance and who might have to carry it if you were registered in those states. However, so I wanted to point that out on the liability side, and then also something that people forget about, which is lien holders, right? So if you have a lien holder, typically they're going to require it. They're going to require insurance. So those would be the two caveats I would say to, oh boy, I used it again, but to, I know, now I'm just noticing it, right? To that comment about, do you have to carry aviation insurance? But otherwise, no, you don't, otherwise you're not required. It's something that each person and company, et cetera, has to decide what is their risk tolerance, right? I'm not sitting here saying, hey, everyone's got to get insurance. There's tons of people that call me up and we talk about things and they say, you know what, I'm just going to do liability, or what do you think about that, right? And they'll ask me, or I'm just, I don't think I'm going to insure. No problem, right? I'm not sitting there saying, I got to stuff this I've got this brand new Honda Accord on the lot. I got to sell it to you right now, right? I mean, that's the used car side, but, and that's perfectly fine, right?
Yeah,
I mean, everybody's got a different risk tolerance. I'm here to give you some good advice. You don't have to work with me for me to give you good advice, but I can at least tell you what's available, and then people can decide. And I'll say, a lot of time, or not a lot, but I would say it's probably rare where somebody says we're going to self-insure. They're probably not calling brokers if they're going to self-insure, so that might be,
the reason.
That might be part of that. But so there's everybody's got a different risk tolerance.
Yeah, I think personally, at a minimum, liability is something to have. But again, I think, like you said, it really depends on the person.
Yeah,
because
it does.
You never know, right?
Yeah.
What are some of the things that somebody looking for insurance should have prepared before they come to you? Like, do they have would you recommend maybe like a logbook history form?
Well, it does help to know how many hours you have. Yeah. Gosh, I think a general understanding, right, of and everybody's pretty much has that, right? At least can you get within the nearest 100, right? I mean, I don't need something.
0.7.
Oh my gosh, I have this conversation. I'm like, if you
42 landings.
They don't ask for how many landings, but no points, no decimal points. Please round to the near. No, but we say conservative, right? So I come from the industry, that, and conservative estimates are just fine. We'll ask for more in-depth documentation once you get there, but have your medical, right? Have your certificate number, have your last IPC and BFR. Those are actually commonly missed. Usually there should be in the back of logbooks, but sometimes people won't know. When the last time they got an IPC or BFR, or limitations on their medical, right? Those are big, or you know.
What about with airline pilots? Like,
Yeah.
so I have this issue with Civil Air Patrol, right? Because they want a record and an endorsement and all that stuff. And well, Spirit doesn't necessarily give me your logbook. Let me endorse you for your.
What is it? Your 61, whatever it is, right? Your recurrent.
Right? Yeah, you did your three. It's funny. I was holding on the way into Miami yesterday, and I told the FO, I'm like, oh, good, I can log my one hold. I'm gonna have my
Holding,
currency.
tracking, and we'll make this one a VFI or a VOR approach, please. So I need it for my currency.
My currency, I gotta keep my currency. Are they that picky that they ask you this stuff? Like, like I want to see the endorsements or that, or
Nope. They're not going to ask me that. So what I'm going to do is represent what you represent to me, which is the reason I asked for a signature on the document that I send out. It's a DocuSign we use.
Right.
And I asked for a signature, and the reason I do is to say that I've answered these questions to the best of my ability. That's all I asked for, right? And then I'm going to represent you the way you represented to me.
Right.
So
you need to have something that you can go off of.
Obviously, though, I'm QCing, right? And that's one of the reasons that you want to have the conversation, right? I think the broker business, and maybe you know this, but aviation insurance it's gotten very transactional. And that's one thing I notice in the industry. It's very fill out this form and we'll get back to you. Like, and I don't think that's necessarily, that works pretty well in the auto side of things because they're really not judging a driver on how they're driving, right? It's like, well, you've got a value in a car and like, where do you keep it? And we look at the crime rates and we see whether it's like, got a garage. Keep in mind, I know nothing about auto insurance, so I do want to note that.
But it's kind of this. Yeah, I see what you're saying.
But like, I don't. On the aviation side, you're representing the experience, the breadth of experience.
A lot more variables.
And there's a lot more variables there, right? So I think it's more important to have an idea and have that conversation. And so we'll QC that, right? Quality check. We'll quality check what gets sent to us to say, hey, you say you have 500 hours, but you also put 500 hours in this make and model. Is that true? Like, do you actually have, oh no, I filled it in the wrong way. Okay, no problem. Let's get a new form, we'll adjust it, no worries. We'll take care of that. So
no, that makes sense.
Yeah.
And we had that even with our policy because we had a discussion of like, what is aircraft rental, right?
Yeah, exactly.
So it's good to have somebody that's checking and saying, yes, this is...
Like a dual crew environment.
Exactly.
That's exact, right? You don't put a green FO with a green captain.
Exactly.
I hope people know what that means. If they don't, Google it.
Another question, location and storage of the aircraft. I
Yeah.
think at one point we said something about Florida being more expensive, or South Florida specifically.
Can be. It can be. Doesn't have to be.
Storage outside or inside? A hangar, obviously, probably less risk.
Yeah, I think, just from a kind of common sense perspective, I think most underwriters say, look, you put the aircraft in a hangar, there's less, hailstorms, wind, et cetera, that can get at it. Yeah, totally. Hangared aircraft typically see lower premiums than tied down aircraft. Just to briefly touch on the state side of things and Florida, South Florida, yes, there are certain underwriters that see South Florida as a higher risk for hurricanes, right? They've had a lot of losses there, so they aren't super keen on quoting very high value aircraft.
That leads to my next question with hurricanes.
Yeah.
When something like a hurricane comes, and in the past we've been very lucky in Florida with hurricanes, but how does the insurance, what's the involvement of the insurance when a storm is coming into an area and relocating an aircraft out of that storm? How does that work? Is there some type of like the insurance? I've heard maybe rumors of the insurance sometimes helping with the relocation costs. Rumors.
Yeah.
What's the word on that?
Yeah, actually, so that's a thing. I want to dispel that rumor right here on this podcast. That's so many policies, whether they are commercial policies or they are pleasure and business, like just owner flown maybe, or even pro flown, right? They could still be a pleasure and business policy. They do have a reimbursement for moving your aircraft out of harm's way. So that is a thing.
Wow.
And you can actually get reimbursed. If you don't know what that is, you can just chat with your broker and ask them. Your broker will know what's in your policy or should know what's in your policy and can actually point to chapter and verse. Pull up your policy and quote chapter and verse. There's usually a limit to that, and that limit varies. So it could be $500 to $2,000, $2,500. It just depends.
Interesting.
So,
yeah. We that's something very good for us to know, especially being in South Florida and getting these storms. We got to move everything out of it.
Certainly, and you're not the. Look at all the coasts, right? The coasts have issues, and then the center has tornadoes. So, you've got stuff everywhere, that can cause. So hangers always, typically, I wouldn't say always, but typically going to see lower premiums than tied out.
I want to close with this. I hate to close with bad stuff, right? Because I hate to talk about bad stuff. But
Okay,
when we're
all right.
talking about insurance, we have to talk about bad stuff too,
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
So accidents, incidents, what can somebody expect, when they bang their airplane up or hurt someone, or, how does that process work, right? Obviously, first you deal with all, first medical, the FAA, whatever, and then at some point you got to call your insurance broker. That's the path, right?
Yeah, that's the path.
So I'm sure those are not the calls you want to get when you get a phone call.
We like to get the call from the person that had the accident or the incident.
That's a good thing.
We really enjoy that. It's funny. Typically, I was just talking to. Claims are not typically funny, but it's ironic actually that I was talking to one of my peers, and we man a 24/7 claims line. So each of us actually on the leadership team mans that, and so someone can call anytime. We'll pick up the phone even at night. But we are typically.
So this is the number I can call at any time to get to you.
Yeah, but you don't have that number. Yeah, I didn't give you that number for a reason. Exactly. No. So, but yes, you could call that number as well. All kidding aside, but we're typically very quickly called. So yes, you're dealing with things, but sometimes it'll be the family or a family member, and then us, right away. And I haven't talked to the FAA yet. I'm sitting here in my aircraft. Something just happened. So we're very quickly called. And that's good. We want to be called. We want to know you're okay. We want to know what's going on. We want to try to help you as best we can. So, but that process is, kind of after the fact. We'll then gather details. We'll have a conversation with you once, you're able to. And decide, what does it look like now that you've had to take a breath? It's been a couple of days. You're able, the aircraft's off the ramp, and you're able to kind of look at some of those things. We'll have that conversation about, do you want this to be a claim? Do you not? And that's one of the benefits of having a middleman as well, right? You can have a conversation before it goes to underwriting.
Maybe this makes sense to go to underwriter. Maybe
it doesn't, right? But you can kind of hash that out.
A little bit on the, let's say for example, it's a big accident, right? You see this stuff on YouTube all the time. People talk about this, and I believe this also varies depending on what your policy is. But if your airplane gets banged up and you call to make a claim, at that point you no longer own the airplane. It's typical how it works. Is the insurance basically buys the airplane away from you, and then
if it's a total loss, yeah. So, but that wouldn't be decided until you filled out the form for your broker, and your broker sent that in to underwriting. Underwriting assigned an adjuster. They send it to your broker to say, hey, here's who the adjuster is. Here's who your client will be working with. We kind of coordinate that. The adjuster reaches out, right, to the client themselves, right, and then they start working through the process of, okay, do you have some, have you had a mechanic look at it? Have you gotten some competing bids? Do you need to get competing bids? And the adjuster pretty much handles it from there. So the adjuster is the representative for the underwriting company, and if they deem it to be a total loss, that is where underwriting will pay you the agreed value if you have hull coverage, right? So whatever you agreed upon at the start of the policy, there's no depreciation in aviation. It's just an agreed value.
Unlike your car or
correct,
boat
which would have
or
depreciation.
Whatever, you have the option to do agreed, or sometimes you don't even have the option to do agreed.
No, a lot of times you just have depreciated value, right? So it used to be worth X and you've been paying a premium, but now we're going to pay you whatever because it's depreciated, and that's typical for auto. But not the case in aviation. So they would pay you out the agreed value, and then yes, they would take your aircraft on salvage, right? They've made you whole again, which is the point of insurance. It's why you carry insurance, or at least hull insurance. So that's why it's so important to have a good agreed value up front. But so at that point, they take it, and then a lot of times you have the first right of salvage. So you actually have the ability to buy it back from the underwriters. The underwriters will give you that ability and say, hey, I want to buy this thing back, and it was $100,000 agreed value, and the salvage guy says, okay, well, it's 20 grand, and you say, okay, I'm going to buy it for 20 grand, and you're going to fix it. Put your 80 into it and fix it. And
gotcha.
Yeah.
Interesting. Yeah, that's a question that I've had personally,
Yeah.
and people have asked about that is how does
they're
that
not,
work? As
they're
far
not taking it away typically. They're not.
right. No.
You have that first right to say, hey, I'm going to buy it back. If you don't do that right there, it's theirs, right?
Right.
They paid you the agreed value. But yeah.
Do you know what happens after that? Like, where does the airplane go? Like, do they put them up for sale?
They
like,
do typically. You'll see. You're on Facebook, right?
Mm-hmm.
So every once in a while, I'll see the like Aviation salvage company or whatever, right? They'll post on all the aircraft trade boards, and they'll say like insurance salvage, right? Or it's a Malibu, or it's a Bonanza, or it's a
So
Piper,
you'll
whatever it
part
is,
it
right?
out.
And they sell them, right? They'll part it out or they'll sell them.
Is there like a rebuilt title like there is for cars for these airplanes, or?
Not that I'm aware of.
I don't think so.
So not that I'm aware. Yeah, because another question we'll get asked a lot is, this aircraft has had a claim in the past or had an incident in the past. It's been fully rebuilt. It's fully airworthy. Does that affect the insurance rates? And the answer is no. If the FAA deems it to be airworthy, underwriters deem it to be airworthy, and there's no way for them to tell that aircraft has ever been in an accident previously.
Right, because they don't have the log.
So the rates would be the exact same as one that has not been in a claim if it's the exact same value, location, and pilot.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Joe, it's been great. I want to end on a happier note. I know we
Yes.
kind of touched that at the end. You're probably ready to go home not home, but to the hotel. Tomorrow we got a big day tomorrow.
Yeah, we do.
But what does the future look like for you? What's your next goals? Any aviation goals? What can you tell me about that? What do you see yourself doing in the next 10 years? What's your goal?
Yeah, that's a good question. I've given it some thought. I'm kind of one of those. I love to plan, but I also end up living one day at a time. Right? I get busy, and so I live one day at a time. So it's hard to think about the long-term goals sometimes. But I really enjoy what I'm doing now, and I really see myself growing. We've grown. We've doubled in size over the last 3.5 years at our company. And there's so much mentorship and leadership there, and those are two things that I really resonate with. So partly that, and doing that on the internal side, and then on the external side, really developing some of my travel and more of the risk management side. So really kind of building on my expertise of aviation risk and policies, and being that expert on the letter. Which for me, not everyone finds that super interesting. Maybe to bring this full circle, it's my CPA dad, in my past, that like the letter. But I really enjoy the technical expertise, much like I did in aviation as an airline guy. The technical side of that, I really still enjoy that on this side. So I think developing that and maybe kind of pushing for that, kind of a more leaning towards risk management and a policy knowledge, technical knowledge.
Well, I wish we could afford a safety officer at Aviator Zone.
Hey, I'm just a phone call away, 24/7.
But it's definitely one of those things that I've always thought, I don't think a lot of flight school owners even think of that as a position, right? Like,
Yeah.
But coming from the airline background, like I'm just thinking, like, when is the day that I can afford to have somebody that their job is to just look at risk and how to mitigate risk and
Yes.
and stop it. We have an SMS system and reporting and all that stuff, right? But to be able to have that full,
Yes.
to really close that up would be nice to just have one person dedicated to that. But
Well, remember, that's something that your broker can do for you, right? So they can come out and look holistically at your risk management structure, and also a lot of commercial policies will have the ability for underwriting to come out and look holistically at your flight school, and they'll actually come out and give you a take on how you're doing from a risk mitigation standpoint. So that's really something that maybe a lot of people don't know as well in their policies, especially your commercial policies, that they can do.
awesome.
So consider it.
Yeah, you
for the future.
learn so much, coming to these events, and
Yeah.
this is why it's so valuable. And I think that it's very worth that you guys are here and actually talking to us. And I think that's really what made our connection so strong too.
Yeah.
Because it feels like you're part of us.
Yeah.
You're there to help us, and not just somebody that we talk to once a year
Right.
and talk about paperwork and stuff that the pilot forms that we don't want to.
Right.
So
Yeah.
I really appreciate it. It's been a great having you. I hope you had fun.
Absolutely.
But
This has
I
been
learned
great.
a lot, and I'm
Yeah.
sure the people listening learned a lot as well. So
I hope so.
if they have any questions, how do they reach you?
They can find us at wingsinsurance.com. I'm there on our leadership team. Otherwise, they can email me, jryan@wingsinsurance.com, or
Awesome.
my phone number.
Well, Joe, again,
Awesome.
thanks for
Thanks,
coming.
Felipe.
It's been a pleasure. man.
Absolutely.
Awesome.
All right.